being native in a city is almost a daily reminder of your people's erasure, of the fact that people don't even remember that you're here and that you exist.
For decades, typo blood has been more than just a medical label. It's been a puzzle hiding in plain sight. Why is it so dominant in indigenous peoples of the Americas? How did it survive and spread across continents?
Still a 50-50 split. We don't know. There is some data that supports the idea that if you're type O blood, maybe that is in some way preventing you from getting the disease.
In 2025, a biomedical breakthrough finally cracked the code. What scientists discovered turned the entire human migration story upside down, tracing our bloodlines back further and deeper than ever imagined. So, what really lives inside type O blood? Flowing in our blood. Way before European explorers began drawing new borders on the world map in the 15th century, something much older and more mysterious was already flowing quietly through people's veins. It wasn't gold, land, or even language. It was blood, and not just any kind of blood, type O blood. What makes this especially interesting is how common type O blood is among indigenous people in the Americas. In some indigenous groups, nearly everyone has it. In fact, certain populations have close to 100% type O blood. That kind of purity is incredibly rare in nature, and scientists aren't just curious, they're honestly a bit puzzled. Here's why it's so strange. Type O isn't just common, it's also the least likely blood type to change over time. It doesn't mix easily with other blood types. It sort of stands on its own, like an outsider that quietly keeps going while other blood types come and go. It's stable, it's strong, and it tells a story that goes back thousands of years. Now let's break down what blood types actually are. Human blood is grouped into 4 main types: A, B, AB, and O. What sets them apart are things called antigens, which are little proteins and sugars on the surface of red blood cells. Type A has A antigens, Type B has B antigens, AB has both, and Type O has none at all. That none at all part is a big deal. Because it doesn't have those antigens, Type O blood is less likely to cause problems when given to someone with a different blood type. That's why it's called the universal donor. In emergencies, Type O can be used for almost anyone, which makes it life-saving in a crisis. But it's not just about hospital use. Type O blood may have helped our ancestors survive. Some scientists believe that people with Type O are more resistant to certain diseases. There's even some evidence it gave extra protection against serious illnesses like malaria. Even though malaria is more common in places like Africa, this still helps explain why Type O blood might have stuck around so strongly in the Americas. When scientists look at blood types across the world, they see something unusual. Indigenous groups in North, Central, and South America have very high rates of Type O blood. In some tribes, it's more than 90%, while the world average is only about 62%. So, how did this happen? One leading idea is that thousands of years ago, small groups of people crossed a land bridge called Beringia from Siberia into North America. If most of them had Type O blood, and they stayed isolated from the rest of the world for generations, then it makes sense that Type O became dominant. Survival in blood. Some scientists think there's more to the story of human survival than just where people lived. One interesting idea is that blood type, especially Type O, may have played a big role in helping early people survive in really tough places. For example, in mountainous areas where the air is thinner and there's less oxygen, people with Type O blood might have had a small but important advantage. Their blood could have been a little better at carrying oxygen. Even though this advantage might seem tiny, in a harsh environment, small benefits like that can make a big difference over time. When the climate is rough and resources are low, even a slight edge in survival can shape who lives, who reproduces, and who doesn't. Over many generations, this can change the whole makeup of a population. Looking at where different blood types are common today is kind of like looking at an ancient map of human migration. In Africa, where humans first evolved, Type O is very common. But as people moved into Europe and Asia, other blood types became more common too. Type A showed up more in Western Europe, and Type B became more common in Central and Eastern Asia. These changes didn't happen randomly. They were likely linked to new environments, new diets, and even how people lived together in groups. When the first humans made their way to the Americas, they brought more than just tools or hunting skills. They also brought their genes, including the gene for Type O blood. This gene became stronger and more common over time. In fact, it became so widespread that Type O is now the most common blood type among many indigenous groups in the Americas. Once these early people settled in the Americas, they didn't have much contact with outsiders for a long time. That meant new genetic traits weren't being added to the population. This kind of isolation acted like a time capsule. The type O gene stayed in place, and then nature did its part. Challenges like disease and tough environments may have made it easier for people with type O blood to survive and have children. Over many generations, people with other blood types may not have been as lucky, so their genes didn't spread as much. What's really unique about the Americas is just how widespread type O is, from the cold Arctic regions to the hot and humid Amazon rainforest. No other part of the world has such high levels of type O blood across so many different places. It's not just a sign of survival, it's a clue to how humans adapted and moved across an entire continent. The story of type O blood begins thousands of years ago, during the Ice Age, when people traveled from Asia to the Americas, most likely across a land bridge in what we now call the Bering Strait. They carried with them a small set of genes, including the one for type O. Over time, that gene didn't just stick around, it spread everywhere. Some scientists now see it not just as a blood type, but as a sign of human strength and adaptation in the face of the unknown. How type O blood became a lifeline. Back in the 1980s, a group of researchers in Arizona began a large study focused on Native American communities. What they found was surprising. Almost 99% of the people they tested had type O blood. At first, this seemed like it might just be something unique to that area. But as more studies were done, scientists started to see the same pattern. From Canada all the way down to South America, many indigenous groups shared this same blood type. That raised an important question. Why was type O so common across such a huge part of the world? To find the answer, scientists looked to evolution and survival. In many of these regions, people faced tough living conditions for centuries. We're talking about harsh weather, food shortages, disease outbreaks, and constant challenges. In situations like that, survival isn't guaranteed, so if a certain trait helped people live longer, it was more likely to be passed on. In this case, type O blood may have offered a survival edge. Unlike A or B blood types, type O doesn't have those extra antigens, which could mean it's less likely to react badly to certain infections. That small advantage may have made a big difference during times when deadly diseases spread through communities. Those with type O might have had a better chance of surviving and having children who also had type O blood. Over time, this created what scientists call a feedback loop. More people with type O survived, more type O babies were born. And slowly but surely, that blood type became dominant in many indigenous populations. But there's more to this story than just biology. The shared presence of type O blood across so many groups became like a quiet signal of connection, a reminder that, even across thousands of miles, these communities were linked by something deep in their DNA. Thanks to modern genetic tools, scientists can now track those connections, mapping migration patterns and family lines across continents. And yes, it all points back to some of the first humans to settle in the Americas. Type O blood isn't just important for understanding our past, it's also a big deal in modern medicine. It's known as the universal donor blood type, especially type O negative. That means it can be given to almost anyone, no matter their own blood type. It's a lifesaver in emergencies, when doctors don't have time to run blood tests. Whether it's a car accident, a major surgery, or a natural disaster, hospitals count on type O blood to save lives. O-positive blood is also widely used, especially when the patient has a positive Rh factor. Because of this, both O-negative and O-positive are always in high demand. But here's the twist. Even though some indigenous communities have a lot of people with type O blood, donations are low. In remote areas, access to blood banks and medical care can be limited, which means that when emergencies strike, there may not be enough supplies. So we end up with a strange and frustrating situation. The blood is there, inside the people who carry it, but it's not always available when it's needed most. Hospitals and blood banks all over the world face a tough job. They need to keep enough type O blood on hand at all times, not just for daily use, but also for sudden emergencies. But because it's so valuable and so needed, keeping up with demand is a constant struggle. One woman, one blood type. Sometimes, science uncovers something so rare, it sounds like fiction. That's exactly what happened when researchers discovered a brand new blood group, now called Guada negative. What makes this even more incredible? So far, it has been found in only one person in the entire world, a 68-year-old woman from Guadeloupe, a French island in the Caribbean. The story began back in 2011 in Paris, when this woman went in for some routine pre-surgery blood tests. But there was a problem. Doctors couldn't figure out her blood type. Even worse, No donated blood matched hers, which made transfusion impossible. At the time, medical technology wasn't advanced enough to explain why her blood was so different, so the mystery remained unsolved for years. Fast forward to 2019, when scientists took another look at her case, this time using new gene sequencing tools that could study her DNA in great detail. Over the next 2 years, researchers worked carefully to study her entire genetic makeup. That's when they found something amazing, a rare mutation in a gene called PIGZ. This mutation changes how certain proteins stick to the surface of red blood cells, creating a blood type that was completely unknown before. Thierry Peyrard, a top biologist at French Blood Research, explained it perfectly. She is the only person in the world compatible with herself. In other words, if she ever needs a blood transfusion, her own blood is the only safe match. In June 2025, at a major medical conference in Milan, the International Society of Blood Transfusion officially recognized Guata negative as the 48th blood group system in the world. That's a huge milestone in the field of blood science. But why does this matter so much? Blood groups are based on antigens, tiny markers on red blood cells that help your immune system tell what belongs in your body and what doesn't. If someone gets the wrong type of blood, their immune system can attack it, which can be life-threatening. That's why accurate blood typing is so important in hospitals. Guata negative shows just how complex and unique human blood can be. It reminds us that our understanding of blood is still growing, and there may be more rare types out there waiting to be discovered. Scientists are now searching to see if others might share this unusual group. If more people with Guata negative blood are found, it could change how we think about blood donations and improve care for those with rare blood types. More than just A, B, and O. When most of us think about blood types, we usually think of the common ones, A, B, and O. And maybe you've heard of positive or negative blood types too, like a positive or O negative. These are part of the ABO and RH blood group systems, which are the most widely known. But did you know that our blood is much more complex than that? The ABO system was discovered in 1900 by Dr. Karl Landsteiner, a scientist whose work earned him a Nobel Prize in 1930. His discovery helped make blood transfusions much safer, saving countless lives. A few years later, the RH system was added. It's the one that tells us whether we're positive or negative, based on the presence of something called the RH factor on red blood cells. Together, ABO and RH give us the basic 8 blood types, but here's where it gets really interesting. As of 2024, scientists have discovered and recognized 48 blood group systems, thanks to years of research and better technology. This includes systems with names most people have never heard of, like Kell, Duffy, Kidd, and the newly identified Guata negative. Each system is based on different antigens, which are like tiny markers on the surface of red blood cells. These antigens help the body know what belongs and what doesn't. If a person receives the wrong type of blood, their immune system might attack it, causing serious reactions. People with type AB blood are lucky. They can receive blood from anyone because they recognize both A and B antigens. On the flip side, people with type O blood can only receive O-type blood because their immune systems would react to any other antigens. That's why knowing your exact blood type matters, especially in emergencies or surgeries. The recent discovery of the Guata negative blood group shows how important it is to keep exploring the hidden parts of our genetics. This rare blood type was found in only one woman from Guadeloupe, and it was caused by a mutation in the PYGZ gene. This gene affects how proteins stick to red blood cells, giving her a completely unique blood type, so unique, in fact, that she can only receive her own blood in a transfusion. Why does this matter? Because it's a reminder that blood compatibility isn't always simple, and there may be other rare blood types out there we haven't found yet. Discovering them is important, not just for understanding how our bodies work, but for making blood transfusions safer for everyone. Researchers are now looking to see if anyone else in the world has this same rare blood group. Who knows? There may be more people out there carrying hidden genetic surprises. How DNA connects us to the past. These days, DNA isn't just something scientists use in labs. It's a powerful tool that helps everyday people learn about their roots. By studying blood types and tiny parts of our genes, researchers can now trace how ancient populations moved, changed, and built their lives. This has been especially important for Native American communities, where stories about family and origin have been passed down for generations. Now, with the help of DNA testing, many people are able to confirm those old family stories. In some cases, they even discover new relatives or unknown connections. For Native communities, this kind of discovery means more than just science. It's deeply personal. It connects them to their history, their land, and their ancestors in a real, powerful way. One well-known example is the family of Sitting Bull, a famous Native leader. Thanks to modern DNA testing, his relatives were able to prove their direct connection to him. That wasn't just a scientific achievement, it was a meaningful confirmation of identity and legacy. It showed that today's technology can help protect and honor cultural heritage. Some genetic markers, tiny clues in our DNA, are found only in Native American populations. These markers help scientists trace back to the earliest people who lived on the American continents. For the descendants of those early groups, knowing this helps strengthen their sense of belonging and gives them a clearer picture of who they are and where they come from. But this isn't only about history books. When people in today's world, especially those whose families were impacted by colonization, start exploring their native ancestry, it can become a deeply emotional journey. Many aren't just curious, they're looking to reclaim something they feel was taken from them. It's about reconnecting with a lost language, lost traditions, and a lost sense of community. DNA can also play a real role in everyday life. For some, proving native ancestry through genetics can lead to access to rights, resources, or recognition that might otherwise be out of reach. Take the story of Leo Lapointe, for example. When DNA confirmed he was a direct descendant of Sitting Bull, it didn't just make headlines, it gave his family a deeper understanding of who they are and where they belong. Still, there are serious concerns too. While DNA testing can be exciting, it also raises important ethical questions. Who controls the DNA data? Who profits from it? And are native voices being respected? Many indigenous groups have experienced exploitation in the past, and now they're asking for more control and respect in how their genetic information is used. Ancestry testing has become a big industry. Companies are selling kits and making money from people's desire to learn about their past. But critics are asking, are these companies giving back to the communities whose histories they're exploring? If DNA technology is going to be used to reconnect people with their roots, it has to be done with care and respect. Otherwise, we risk repeating the same mistakes, taking from native people without giving them a voice. DNA doesn't just help us understand recent ancestry, it's changing what we know about ancient humans too. By studying old genetic links, researchers have discovered that modern humans share DNA with Neanderthals and another ancient group called Denisovans. These weren't simple cavemen. They had tools, art, and complex lives. In fact, many people today carry traces of their DNA, proving our ancestors not only lived alongside them, but even interbred. This blending of genes gave us more than just physical traits. It shaped the diversity we see in people today. And as science continues to explore our ancient past, we're starting to see just how rich, complicated, and connected the human story really is. How trauma might be passed down in our DNA. Have you ever wondered if the pain, stress, or survival struggles your ancestors went through could actually be carried in your body today? Not just as stories or family traditions, but in your DNA itself. Scientists are now beginning to explore this idea through a field called epigenetics, and the possibilities are both fascinating and emotional. Epigenetics doesn't mean that your genes are changed, but it does mean that the way your genes behave can be influenced by life experiences, especially extreme ones. Think about war, colonization, forced migration, or famine, events that shook families and entire communities to the core. These types of trauma can leave behind chemical tags on DNA, which affect how genes are turned on or off. Even more surprising, these chemical changes can be passed down from parent to child and sometimes even to grandchildren. This idea is especially meaningful for indigenous communities in the Americas, whose ancestors endured colonization, violence, and being forced off their lands. Could the stress and suffering they experienced be showing up today in how their descendants feel, think, or even how their bodies work? Some early research suggests that this might be the case. Studies have looked at descendants of enslaved people in the Americas and found unusual patterns that can't be explained just by upbringing or environment. These findings hint at something much deeper, a physical memory of trauma living inside our very cells. But for many indigenous people, this idea isn't new at all. Many have long believed in something called blood memory. It's the belief that the knowledge, pain, and strength of one's ancestors are carried forward in the blood. Now, modern science is beginning to support what many cultures have always known, that history lives within us, not just around us. And this goes beyond just trauma. As we discover more about blood group systems, rare genetic traits, and how ancient humans moved across continents, we're also learning how our blood connects us to a bigger story. We hope you enjoyed this video. Stay tuned for more amazing stories.